Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Daily Energy Markets Forum, where every morning we reflect on the market open in Asia and what might be the direction of travel for oil markets through the day and the rest of the week. Peter McGuire, CEO of XM Australia. Peter, everything in China looks like it's still on track for a very bullish outlook. China oil imports, crude oil imports into China jumped 21% in March, as mentioned by Paul. Why would that not be giving some uplift to oil, particularly when we're seeing on the risk asset size equities, Bitcoin still breaking records every few days?
Well, good morning, Sean. Good morning, other panelists. Yeah, I think a little bit of demand destruction, Sean. Have a look where we are, building on what Paul and Ollie said. There's very, very range bound, and the smart money certainly isn't making much of a dollar if you're trying to be long or short. If you're taking option strategies, that might be a different appetite. But quite simply, there's no clear breakouts either side until you really get a little bit more push, and the push has got to be probably later in this quarter. If we get through the Brazil numbers, is what we're thinking as far as those COVID and India, if we seem to tail them back off, then it could be a strong push up for July, August, September for crude. But at the present, there's easier money to be made on other markets, Sean, and there's no greater traction. As far as China's concerned, yeah, there's no doubt that I think it's going to be, they'll surprise this week with numbers, and I think it's probably going to be a very, very strong quarter for them. So
do you see any downside risk, Peter, or is this just to the upside, when and how far it moves, but we're pretty much done to the downside?
Well, that US dollar I keep an eye on, Sean. It's off from that 93.2 to really 92.2. So I'm keeping an eye on that, the inflation numbers. Demand destruction is an issue that I think everyone's getting back on board because of India's COVID, and of course Brazil and America, is the US's numbers are climbing again, so that creates more angst, and across Europe as well. So we're a long way out from absolute sunshine. I think 21, we always said it was going to be a rocky year, and that is starting to materialize.
Peter, in earlier days gone by, the kind of geopolitical noise that we're seeing in the region at the moment would have been supportive to oil prices. We saw overnight reports of further missiles out of Yemen towards Aramco facilities in the kingdom. We've also had the Iranians threatening Israel on retaliation for what was seen as some kind of a target, a cyber attack on the Iranian nuclear facility at Natanz. What is your sense of this? And of course, all the time the Iran talks are going on in Vienna. Is this something that the market should be paying more attention to?
Well, Sean, building on that, you would have thought that would have had some form of spike there, maybe a couple of bucks, but it just hasn't happened, and it really has no impact at the moment. I'm not to say that it won't have an impact if things build from here.
And we also have geopolitical risk in eastern Ukraine. There's a lot of noise there about potential aggression, and the rhetoric overnight is elevated.
Well, of course, and the other side is that hasn't gone away is the Taiwan/China issues. So, yeah, I really would have thought that may have been enough of an impetus to wrap a couple of bucks on it, but it just hasn't happened. It hasn't materialized, and possibly it needs to see more action from and that's from a bad scenario, but more deliberate in the sense of the strikes, and to take out maybe refinery or do something like that to really have an impact. And at the present, I would think that the world is just absorbing this. It's mindful as far as virus. It's mindful as far as OPEC and their viewpoints. And at the present, there's nothing really there from a geopolitical side to ignite friction and create a risk premium rolling into it.
Peter, you mentioned earlier the dollar, watching the dollar. It's been on a weakening trend for a few weeks now. Anything that you would identify that could possibly shift it back to a bullish trend?
Well, Sean, since the start of the month, we've seen a very, very strong push to the upside as far as euro. The Aussies had a nice little rally, also Kiwi dollar a little bit, and some of the other currencies against that dollar. So maybe it's just in a downdraft at the moment. I think it was at some point there, it was probably overbought when it shot through 93. So at the present, it's that 92.2, 92.3 handle. I think it's got the capacity to be in the 91.7s, 91.8 over the next matter of a week or two. And I think that continual softness may be where a trader needs to look at that part of the market. So
has the effort that we saw, the sort of some strengthening on the dollar on the back of the bond markets indicating higher rates cycle, is that now tension gone out of the market?
Well, I think it has to a point, after building what Ollie said. The other side is, of course, that Jay Powell keeps on coming out and saying there's nothing to worry about. So that just seems to flatten it again and take all of that hot air. So that's why I'm thinking that there's possibly a further push to the downside over the next week or week and a half, that continual downdraft. And from a trading perspective, just taking a little bit out of that US dollar. That could be a push for, maybe you might add $1 or $1.50 to oil. We'll just have to wait and see on that. But at the present time, I think that that's where the market is.
Let's get the results of the survey. Give Peter the last word here today. COVID-19 versus vaccines is still the gateway, if you like, to the future direction. One wins over the other. In Asia, that would not appear to be a challenge, Peter.
Well, that's exactly right, Sean. And I think that when you think about it, the equity markets may be the draw card as far as Asia. That's been a very strong move. Japan's been quite surprising, I think, over the last matter of months. Certainly China is now starting to get a little bit of, wind in their sails. And the overall mood is that Asia, from the lens that I look through and where we're positioned, it's a fairly good sign. I mean, we talk to people in Singapore, Malaysia, certainly Thailand and across Indonesia, and there seems to be a resurgence there. The economies are ticking up. The general mood across the countries is fairly strong. So I think that will be a drawing force, and maybe that's going to be the push forward. Hopefully Australia can be, dovetail into that good news sentiment. So that's where we're sitting from the Asia Pac.
Peter, on the point of OPEC plus in sort of their next direction, if you like, are they under a time pressure, you think, to increase looking over their shoulders at shale and others, or can they hold the line for longer?
Well, I think they can hold the line for longer, Sean. I feel as though that, from a demand destruction standpoint, let's get through where India plays and with these growing numbers, and Brazil and across Europe, of course. So that's where I think OPEC have got, that's what their lens is and what they're looking at very, very closely. So we've just got to get through the next quarter. And then where are we come July? Because if things gallop and become far worse from a COVID perspective, then we've got a different argument altogether this time next month, Sean.
Well, I do think we are getting into that window where the European summer travel season nearly is closing from the point of view of holidays in the sun, so to speak, where that and all of the sort of vaccine regulations, they seem to be becoming stiffer rather than loosening. And so maybe that's one area where you will start to be guided by the recovery being pushed out to the fourth quarter, besides the US and China. But let's watch that space. Thank you very much, Ole, checking in from Denmark, Peter from Australia, Paul from Dubai. Thank you all. Have a great day, and we'll catch up to you in the coming days. Thank you, everybody. All the best.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. See you. See you guys.
Cheers.
See you, Sean. See you guys.
See you.